Cash Color Cannabis, a high level of conversation. I'm back at it, LivehiphopDaily.tv. I accidentally had another guest. You know what I mean? Like my man just happened to be in the studio, and I'm gonna give y'all a briefing on him because I'm pretty sure a lot of people might not know him, and you know, if you're not in that world. When I first moved down to Atlanta, my first writing job was with my man Dennis Byron. That's one of my OGs in journalism, and he hired me to write for Hip Hop Inquirer. And one of my first stories I got assigned to do was he calls me and goes, "Yo, I'm sending you this man's number. His name's Cavorio. He runs down the whole spill. I want you to talk to him." So I was like, cool. It's my first time speaking to brother. So I got a chance to speak to you that day, and I learned so much about your connection between some of the major street magazines that came out to some of the hip hop weeklies to some of your connections to rap, and just your story overall was just amazing to me at that time because, you know, very few people live through the 80s like that and live through the life that you live. So it was crazy. At the time you had Raised by Wolves, you know what I'm saying, which was your book. And I see now you got Old Gangsters and Young Guns, and you got a podcast. You got a lot going on right now, man. But we gonna talk. We're gonna talk, man. So like I say, with short introductions, my man Cavario's in the building with me today. Cavorio, how you doing today?
I'm excellent, bro. Alive, healthy, free, and functional.
For sure, man. For those who don't know, man, dive us, I guess, briefly back into the history of Cavorio. You know what I mean? Because I know, again, you was born into the game, basically. Your parents your parents were drug dealers.
Yeah. I come from an organized crime family. My mother and my father and all my uncles and, you know, my older cousins, siblings. So when I came in, I was the third generation.
Third generation of it, man.
From Harlem, born in the late 60s, raised in the 70s. Hit the street in 1980, 13. Did it until I was 30, 17 and a half years. And I retired. And, 2 years later, after working on was at that time an introspection, a personal introspection, basically an effort for me to figure out what I was going to do with my life since I was not going to be doing the only thing I'd ever done.
Yeah.
I've been reading a lot of self-help books and personal development books and psychology, behavioral science books, and it didn't matter which one it was or who the author was. When at the point at which it said, okay, this is what you need to do to begin to, you know, heal yourself, it was always right. Always encouraging that I write.
Yeah.
So I'd always had an aptitude for writing, always had an attraction to it. I'm an artist, you know, visual artist by nature, and writing became a form of art for me. So I started writing, you know, what was a personal diary, and after about maybe 60 pages or so, it occurred to me that I had survived an existence that most people did not.
Correct. Yeah.
So I started to toy with the idea that maybe I would share this information. And I wanted to have a distinct literary voice. I didn't just want to be words on a page. You know, I did this, I did that, I did this. I'd read a bunch of books, you know, by people who had lived in the street life, who existed in the street life, experienced the street life, whatever. And I didn't feel like there was anything that could be said in terms of exploits that would be worth writing about if there weren't some type of value that could be brought forth by the sharing of that.
Yeah.
So if it was just going to be another ghetto glory story, it wasn't worth writing.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, so I wrote for 2 years, and then accidentally discovered or created Don Diva magazine. And that really got me into, obviously I was writing a hell of a lot more at that point.
Yeah.
Because I wrote between 60 and 100% of Don Diva magazine myself. Took all of the pictures myself for the first 4 years. Sold every magazine out of my own hand. The first 53,000 copies of that magazine I sold directly from my own hand. And did the distribution across the country myself, starting in Harlem, going from barbershop to barbershop, because that's where people sat still.
Yeah.
The people I was trying to impact with the information, they were, in those places, and that's where I could get their attention. And I went from barbershop to barbershop and borough to borough, and then, back to the states and the towns that I had done my thing in when I was in the game, and did the same thing in those places. and just built it like that.
Bro, let me say, Don Diva is a crucial part of our culture right now. Like, if you ever had a chance to grab a Don Diva, you would know why. You told a story, and you helped create a platform that told a story about a line of brothers and sisters who went through a whole era that right now we kind of reminisce about through rap music and stuff like that. But really, these are people who really live these lives, the Pappy Masons of the world. You know what I'm saying? Like, these people really live these lives, and you were able to bring those lives to people like myself. You know what I'm saying? So I think, again, that was amazing. What was it? Was it hard to do that much? You know what I mean? Because I know, again, some of these brothers don't want to tell these stories, or some of them might not have wanted to relive some of the things that they did. Was it hard initially getting some of these cats to open up and speak about their lives for the magazine?
I mean, initially, I don't look at things through a hard or easy spectrum.
Okay.
For one. If you intend to do something, then you're gonna do whatever's necessary. If you sold drugs in some of the most dangerous and volatile cities in the United States during the most dangerous and volatile times in the United States, then you certainly don't look at anything that doesn't involve somebody potentially getting killed or going to prison for the rest of their life as hard.
Yeah.
None of it was hard.
Yeah.
The challenge was adapting my own thinking and processing in a way that I could see, approaching doing this, and coming from the thing, the idea of sharing these stories and these experiences with the civilian society was in and of itself daunting, because it went against everything that I was taught.
Yeah.
But the world had changed in a way that my forebears could not have foresaw or anticipated. It never thought that regular people would want to live our lives. It never occurred to us. It never occurred to us that they were going to at some point get tired of watching us live these extraordinary existences.
Yeah.
And want to participate. Because we never talked to them about what we were doing. We just displayed the aesthetics. So it never really occurred to us that they didn't really understand all that went with the daily decisions that it took to survive in that existence, thrive in that existence. So, the difficulty was in coming to terms with that myself and the necessity of it myself, because somebody had to do something to counter the disinformation and the hip-hop hyperbole and the romanticization of the destructive lifestyle. Yeah. Somebody had to do something. Yeah. Right? And that was what I said to my peers, when I went to them and said, this is what I'm doing. They knew that I am true to it. And it doesn't matter how many times the people in the comment boxes say, how many times are you going to tell us he's a genetically engineered gangster? Well, I'm going to tell you like this. If I thought that I could say it one time and have people understand what it meant, then I would have said it one time. But I'm looking at the evidence of the density of their, ability to assimilate understanding. And they don't get it. You see enough people get killed. You see enough people dying, trying to jump into a lifestyle from a civilian's perspective. You don't come from it. And when I say come from it, I mean come from it. Whereas you suckled on it. Whereas you were given the morals and the structure of that existence from childhood, so it becomes a natural part of you. Yeah. Not you 15, 16 years old, and you're with a group of people who are nothing like the people that you were developed by, and they're listening to music that is encouraging them, and they're watching videos that are encouraging them and movies that are encouraging them into this lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And now you decide, this is what I'm gonna do, man. I'm gonna get money. And in your mind, getting money means going in the street and getting involved in criminality and not understanding any degree of what this will call upon from you. Yeah. I'm not talking about this potentially going to prison. I'm not talking about this potentially getting killed. I'm talking about all of the other things, all of the multitude of other potential outcomes and impacts that can wear away on you emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, and physically in that world before you go to jail, before you get killed. You know what I mean? that you would have no idea of because mommy was a nurse and daddy was a mechanic. Oh, but I come from the neighborhood and all these people were doing, they were doing things you didn't understand and most of them didn't understand.
Yeah.
There's a small percentage of people who were really suited for that existence. And those small percentage are the ones that actually ride it all the way out and take everything that come with it. The majority of people, not just now. I was just with my former Sex Money Murder partner, Pistol Pete's father, the original Pistol Pete, Mr. Leonard Rolock. And he was talking about how it was me, him, and my man Sean Hartwell, E-Port Posse, who is also featured in Old Gangsters and Young Guns.
We're going to get to that.
Right?
Yeah.
And we were talking about the uncommonality of people standing up. People think this is a recent advent. It is not. People have been getting broken before they were giving cats 40 years and 50 years, or these first-time mandatory sentences for, less than 2 ounces of hard cocaine, and you get 10 years mandatory and you never even had a late pass.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Before that was happening, cats were telling. The idea that, there was never a time when men told on other men to avoid the consequences of their choices, that's not real. But if you're not really from it, then you're getting these ideas from movies that's how it was. I keep seeing people commenting, talking about how it used to be. But you don't know nothing about how it used to be.
How many of them actually lived it?
They don't know nothing about how it used to be. And anybody who's lived it knows. We recognize you. We see you. We can read right through you. But there's so many of them that they've all convinced one another that they know what they're talking about. While my people, the people I was created by and engineered by and raised by, they sat back and was like, first of all, we don't talk to them, right? So, and we taught you not to talk to them. So how could they even begin to think they know what they're talking about? They just sat back and was like, watch the fools run into one another. I mean, when I was in the streets in the 80s and 90s, I just say, the cops need somebody to lock up. I'm not telling them nothing. And I moved smooth and got to my bread and did what I had to do and what I wanted to do and went about my business when I got ready to. I left the game winning.
Yeah. And what I remember, again, when I spoke to you at Hip Hop Inquirer, I remember you saying that you left the game winning and you came down to Atlanta. And that's kind of how you got involved with hip hop.
Yeah, I retired the year after I bought my house. I bought my house here in '96 before the Olympics came.
Solid, man. And you came down here. You were part of, I feel like, a wave of New Yorkers who came down and kind of helped the hip hop community get started down here. A lot of money came from New York that kind of helped establish a lot of the things that we see now, as far as rappers wise, as far as the studios we see being built early in the game, as far as some of the clubs that were being invested into. A lot of that came from some of the cats coming from down there from New York, like yourself, into the city.
I mean, I never invested any money into the infrastructure of Atlanta's hip hop culture. It was pretty much going on when I got here. When I first came here for my 24th birthday. Like, I don't know, 1993 or something like that. It was pretty popping. You know what I mean? I think even then I was going to 559 and Kaya and 112 and a whole plethora of other clubs that
don't exist no more,
that have faded into the into the background. But Atlanta had its own culture going on. Now, if there were people who were also from New York, perhaps you're apprised of some information in that respect that I'm not aware of. But if there were some others from New York who came through and put money behind different situations or whatever that, create a foundation for that, it's news to me. But, what New York did bring, I think, was a degree of the northern influence. Not that I feel like the sound that was happening here needed it. I appreciated the sound, I appreciate it. I met CeeLo and them in CeeLo and Cujo and Gip, and I met them at Kaya. And me and CeeLo, we clicked immediately because he was on the high sciences like me. You know what I mean? What I think the kids call being woke today. So I dug what was happening here, and I felt it was something in and of itself, that was Atlanta based. And there was, what I do feel that New York brought was division, because when I got here, Atlanta was clicked up. Everybody was supporting everybody. Everybody was on everybody's video set. Everybody was coming to everybody's album releases and listening parties. That's how I was able to meet so many people, because they were all together.
They're all in one spot.
All in one spot, all the time. You know what I mean? But yeah, you know, so as far as, you know, as that's concerned, that's my experience as a New Yorker. You know, as far as the creation of the Don Diva thing and bringing that into fruition and getting the participation of my former cohorts and comrades and associates, stuff like that, that didn't take nothing, because I had well established myself, you know, as a guy who's really about it. I walked the walk that I talked in my entire life, you know, and so, you know, people knew what it was. So anybody who didn't know, I wasn't more than 3 degrees removed from anybody who was anybody, from top to bottom in that game.
So the blessed part is, you know, this is you have another novel. You know, I remember again when I first spoke to you, it was Raised by Wolves. The book that was about you growing up within
autobiography.
Yeah. So now we got Old Gangsters and Young Guns.
This is my third novel.
Third novel, excuse me. I'm sorry. Speak to us about Old Gangsters, Young Guns, man. What's the concept behind that?
Well, Old Gangsters and Young Guns is actually an anthology of the top 10 stories that I did in Don Diva. Okay. So you got Boy George, you got E-Port Posse, you got Akbar Prey, you got Aaron Jones out of Philadelphia, Junior Black Mafia. You got the BMF story from the inside, because I was on the inside. You know, Meech is one of my dearest friends for a very long time, and you know, Sex, Money, and Murder, which was my clique before a gang was an aspect of it. That was a thing that Petey brought into it. You know, we were never a gang at all. It was no gang. It was a get money crew, street niggas getting to the bread. We didn't take no shit. We didn't play no games, but we were no gang. You know, Latin Kings also featured in here, but in addition to those stories, the real painful story, not just from the perspective of the people who were victimized, like young Donnell and you know, Richard, but also from the individuals who were on the other side of that. You know, so I have a letter in here from Preacher, who ran the crew that Richard's uncle, who's actually behind that kidnapping, was working with and was participatory in that whole kidnapping thing. So because of the stop snitching, you know, concept of Don Diva, because that's where it started. The stop snitching thing started in Don Diva, because I refused to put anybody on the cover or in the magazine who had snitched. I didn't care what your glory story was. If you had all the cars in the world and made all the money in the world and, you know, did all the glorious things in the world, but you told, then all that's erased and it's replaced with snitch. See, now that's a concept that this generation and the generation just before it have no concept of, because they are squares, because they are civilians. To them, the exploits are the exploits, and that's what they're enamored with. So to say that none of it matters because the person snitched, that doesn't register with them. That doesn't register with them at all. It's like why not? His story is so great. Yeah, but he's a rat. But so, of course it's so.
I feel like we about to see that with Tekashi. You know, like the whole Tekashi situation is such a telltale. That should be a story that gets told to.
Yeah, it should be. That's
serious.
Yeah.
Because like you literally.
That's a cautionary tale for your ass.
You talk about a kid who really. You talking about 15, 16 years old. You developed yourself into a gang, and you know what I'm saying, and got yourself involved in a situation that.
Was he that young?
He's now 23.
Yeah, I think this is a relatively recent advent for dude, man. I think that he got involved with that whole situation probably around 20 or 21, something like that.
Really? I thought it was 18. Yeah, because he's fairly young now.
No, I don't think that. From what I've picked up, and to be honest with you, that silliness is that whole situation is really peripheral to me.
Really?
Because it's nonsense. It's nonsense. I don't preoccupy myself with nonsense at all. I just stay peripherally aware of what other people are paying attention to, because, I have to deal with a society that's preoccupied with nonsense. So when I'm talking to a nonsensical person, as I am often, I have to be kind of in tune with what the fuck is this jackass talking about, while I'm trying to be polite and civil with stupid motherfuckers.
No, I totally dig it, man.
You dig what I'm saying?
Let's talk about the book.
Yeah, so, Old Gangsters and Young Guns, in addition to those stories, each of those stories, my man Isaac Wright's story, who you may have recently heard 50 Cent speak about doing a series on his life. He was a guy who went to jail for being a kingpin and is now a lawyer. Okay. A major lawyer. So how he went from being incarcerated as a kingpin, convicted as a kingpin, and being given life in prison, and being a lawyer today is a supremely unique and interesting story. It is the most gangster story I've ever done, because he beat them at their own game. In addition to those stories is some connective tissue, a series of articles that are based on study and experiential knowledge that I possess, and not just my own, but those of my predecessors that were given to me, that enabled me to survive a life that most people do not survive. Statistically, I am an anomaly.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's funny the degree of jealousy and idiocy that I have recently encountered with this, doing this, the Dope and Game podcast thing. And I've only just been giving people glimpses of it, and partnered up recently with Al Prophet, who is the premier true crime documentarian in this country. A really thorough, intelligent man who really respects the culture. He's from Detroit, he's from the hood, and he has a series called American Dope. I've been collecting Al's work for 10 years. Al's most recent piece was a documentary on Frank Matthews, right? And he did a very, very thorough job of not just helping people understand that black people from the inner city, or in Matthews' case from, rural Carolinas, do not control drug importation or the means by which drugs are imported.
Not at all.
Right? But black people have been made to be the face representing the scourge of drugs in America.
Yes.
See, America loves to use drugs, but also loves to lock people up for selling drugs. Very duplicitous place.
Yeah.
Right? And what Al has done is established a line that goes across, the continents, and explains the true history of these drugs, their origins, and the real people in power that enable them to make their way into inner cities across the country, and enable young men like Frank Matthews, like Demetrius Big Meech Flannery, to get to the levels of acquisition that they did, in that field. The information that weaves these stories together is about the understandings that I have adapted through, again, my experiences, and through the experiences of those who've come before me, and explains all these subtle nuances that if you're just some civilian, watching through your TV screen or on your phone or whatever have you, you would have no idea whatsoever. You don't understand the rationale, the reasons behind these choices and so forth. You don't understand the mindsets of the individuals who obviously have gifts and aptitudes beyond the average, that they could create these organizations, run these operations,
absolutely,
and have these intricate and sophisticated organizations going, for any period of time.
Absolutely.
Without institutional training. There's no, I don't even have a high school diploma, but I ran an organization, every aspect of it: security, pay, distribution, production, manufacturing, transportation, successfully.
Ran a business.
Without a formal education, So imagine if we had the opportunity to recognize those aptitudes and apply them in a real world setting, And there are people who have always imagined that and have done everything they could to undermine that potential outcome for a multitude of reasons.
Yeah.
You know, so that kind of information is what connects these stories. It's not just, hey, look what this guy had. Hey, look what this guy did. Like so many of the people who are attracted to this kind of content are so enamored with, bro. Like some of the tough guy, sucker ass shit that I hear some of these retarded motherfuckers. It's okay if I cuss like a son of a bitch, right?
Do your thing.
Because I'm pissed the fuck off at some of these stupid motherfuckers, man. I know there's a lot of people out there with some significant psychological and emotional issues, bro. But what they need to understand is, you know, you can be a keyboard kamikaze all the fuck you want to, right? But what you better not do is allow this personage that you've hidden behind with your, you know, Gangsta 2001 or whatever these fucking made up fucking pseudonyms you made up for yourself. Don't let them get you to a point where you forget that you're not on a keyboard and you encounter someone like myself in real life and forget where you are, who you are. Because if that happens, you're going to deal with real world consequences, motherfucker, let me tell you. I have no consideration whatsoever for you stupid motherfuckers. Now, you want to think that there's something that's not real or genuine about me, and you don't have enough good goddamn sense to call somebody, if you know somebody, and ask somebody about my well-established record, then motherfucker, you will get a thorough education. Know that.
Peace. Bro, right now we in a situation where, you know, and this is how I had a chance to speak to you the second time, because you had me with Branson. We're in a situation right now, we're watching the country move towards legalization. You know, we're in a place where more states right now are legal when it comes to cannabis, medical, and recreational than we are who aren't. Most of this is being built off the backs of those who went through this drug war. You know, saying from the 80s and 90s, even prior to that, definitely in the 70s, when we had conversations about a drug war, we had conversations about who was going to be the victims of this drug war. We watched that all happen, and right now we're watching a situation where part of that drug, which was cannabis, was a drug that was illegalized, that was illegal at the time, and is now still technically illegal, is now being sold. It's being profitabilized. You're seeing John Boehner's get involved in it. You're seeing people like that get involved. From the outside looking in, how do you feel about what you see when it comes to legalizing cannabis? And do you feel like that as this industry grows, they have to recognize what happened in the 80s and 90s as far as people being bagged up and being locked up for so long and being criminalized and being pushed to the side for so long?
Yeah, I mean, your question is, how do I feel?
Yeah.
I feel like this is atypical of the American system. Mm. You know, to criminalize, subjugate, you know, take advantage of, and marginalize the you know, people who don't have the infrastructure, you know, or the connections within the infrastructure to protect themselves against people who have means is the way of the American. It's the mind of a colonizer. It's what they do. They exploit and take advantage of. That's the way that this place was built. That's a historical fact. That's not my personal perspective. You know, it's a matter of record. It's what they've done. It's what they do.
True.
The thing is, when you recognize that the nature of a thing is the nature of a thing, it's time for you as the individual on the opposite end of that to start taking some, you know, some different routes to understand what you're up against, to understand that you're going to need far more than a fucking gun to protect yourself from this particular enemy. You know? Yeah, they are making money. They are making money off this shit. In Baltimore, they have a dispensary that is put in the place where they had one of the highest rates of marijuana arrests. You think that's by accident?
Not at all. And you know the arrests were for? Yeah, not at all. None of this, like you say, none of it is by accident.
No.
No.
And there are patterns, and not difficult to see. If motherfuckers will open their eyes and stop being focused on stupid shit, you know, whether Cardi B and the young man that she's involved with are on Offset, whether they're on or off or in or out, or I mean, that shit is completely inconsequential to your fucking existence.
None of our business.
Right? So the idea that you should put any attention whatsoever to anything as far as those individuals concerned outside of the entertainment they provide is fucking stupid. And as long as you're entertained by shit like that, as long as you're distracted by shit like that, you are going to be taken advantage of. You are cannon fodder, right? You're food for the machine. And you know what happens with sheep? They get fleeced, and then they get butchered, and then they get served up. That is their purpose. So until people stop volunteering to be sheep, you can expect to get taken advantage of. Educate yourself. Read a fucking book. Take some classes on something that is important. There are circumstances that are affecting and impacting your life every day. Political, sociological, psychological. Learn something. If it hadn't been for reading, there's no way in the fucking world I would be here right now. Reading saved my life, period. Opening my mind to information saved my life, period. You know, if you think that you have all the information that you're ever going to need to get you where you want to be or what you want to have, then why don't you have what you want to have and aren't you where you want to be if you think you already got it? And if you don't think you got it, then what the fuck are you doing about getting it? On average, motherfuckers are doing nothing. To think that you can get into your car, fill that motherfucker up one time, and then drive on forever is the equivalent of that. Of thinking that all the information you're currently in possession of is going to get you as far as you want to go. Motherfuckers can't be bothered. They can show you how you can roll a blunt with one hand in the dark, though, while holding a drink. That's a skill set. If you think that, you're fucking lost.
That's an interesting skill set.
But these are the types of things that these people, our community, regardless of what their ethnic background is, the people who identify with our community, with the hip-hop community, with the inner city community, these people are preoccupied with a bunch of non-value add bullshit. And it's getting worse. It's getting fucking worse because I party with their grandparents. See, my peers are 75. My children's mother's 60 fucking years old. My peers are 70. These people used to be hot and mean and tough and smart. And now they burnt the fuck out. And y'all are doing the same exact shit, only at an accelerated rate that they were doing. You think you're doing something new. You ain't none of you doing a fucking thing new. Not a goddamn thing new. Not one thing. Not your clothes, not your style, not your attitude, not your walk, not your talk, not your game. None of it is new. You didn't make up a motherfucking thing. Everything has been conceived of and or done. Nothing is new under the sun. Cut the bullshit. Wake the fuck up. Wake the fuck up, man. Or die in the dark, and that's what's real talk. That's what's going to happen. I've watched it. They're not the first. I saw the generation before me. I've seen my generation, and I watched the subsequent generations that followed. I've watched it, and it's just happening faster. That's all. Yeah. Educate yourselves. Reprioritize. Understand what's important. It ain't about fucking escapism. Because you're going to look up one day, and you're going to have more time behind you than you got in front of you. And that's happening a lot sooner than it used to.
Yeah. Yeah. So. Yeah, it's one of them, you gonna say something, Herb? It's one of them things you recognize, you know what I'm saying? We all growing old and we all getting up in that age, you know what I'm saying? Where you need to start recognizing not only what is about to happen, what just happened behind you, because what happened behind you is what's going to about to happen, you know what I'm saying?
That's right.
Like you said, patterns, you know what I'm saying? Like you have to notice what's happening. I often have a conversation, I just turned 40 December 4th, right? And I have conversations with people who are in my generation. I often get the whole thing, like you said, people romanticize stuff that they feel like people can't recognize right now. You know what I'm saying? Like people, like I say, I remember being on the bus with a girl whose son has to be 23 right now. I can imagine what she was telling her kids, or what her kids believed what was happening when we were 16. It was a lot of crazy shit, but it might not have been what she told you. You know what I'm saying? Right. It's all about perspective, but we definitely have to start looking back into stuff. We definitely have to start, like you say, reading and exploring not just what is in front of you, but you really got to start paying attention to what's behind you. Exactly. And I think that's another reason why this cannabis thing is a big. I really feel like we need to start involving more people like yourself in these conversations. You know what I mean? Like this is a look back. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's right. Like you lived through shit that we can't possibly understand in order to benefit from what we're dealing with right now. But there was a lot that went through that. That's right. So I'm blessed that you came on here, brother. I'm blessed that you blessed with us. What's next for you, man? What you working on next?
Well, like I mentioned, Dope and Game is my new podcast. Okay. I've only began to release increments, little small pieces of it to give people an idea of what to expect. But I mean, to the degree that they can make a determination about what to expect based off what I release. Most people don't have the qualification to be real serious. Like what I'm going to be giving them is just like in Don Diva. A lot of people didn't get that. They didn't get that. It's like they saw it, and all they saw was, oh, look at the money, look at the cars, look at the jewelry. They didn't. They couldn't put the shit into context. How could they?
We did a lot of them did it too with American Gangster when it came out on BET. Yeah. You saw one thing, but you didn't see the levels of shit that happened around that. Like you spoke about Pistol Pete. Right. Pistol Pete's life is something that people, again, you should look at that shit.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Three life sentences, sitting in a cement block.
For real.
Underneath a fucking building.
For real, past the name.
Without them, they don't want him to have no contact with nobody. And it's not that damn serious. He was a damn kid, and he had kids up under him, and he sent a letter out, and motherfuckers being children and wanting to be adulated and wanting to be valued did what they thought would make them that. Yeah. That's all. Yeah. And he's in the same place as the Unabomber, where they had what's his name?
They had Preem up in there too. You talking about?
No, Preem, no, ADX. ADX. They got John Gotti was there. Like, come on, man. That don't make no sense. They got Larry Hoover there. Like it's not that serious, bro. And see, every time, like even with this BMF thing that 50's been pushing. Every time something pops up, BMF, Meech gets thrown in a fucking hole.
Didn't know that.
Every time something pops up, Sex, Money, and Murder, Pete gets buried deeper in the goddamn ground. Because they don't know how to respond to this level of influence. See, when I was coming up, no matter how big a guy was, once he was in prison for a couple of years, he was forgotten about because there were no mediums by which he could be perpetuated. So those who remembered him were able to talk about him. Those who didn't remember him weren't, right? And those who were only vaguely familiar with him, they replaced him with the next person that they adulated. So there wasn't that. And they're dealing with a whole other thing now. Yeah. It's like, yo, this guy, we're stopping his letters, we're limiting his phone calls, and still, they keep talking about him. The Supreme Team, Sex, Money, and Murder, and BMF. Because these are the things that people are trying to capitalize on.
Yeah.
Some British dude just wrote a damn book about Sex, Money, and Murder. Some British journalist. What the hell are you talking about? How? How?
What about the first BMF book? Like, who wrote that?
Mara Shalop. And she was an editor from the Creative Loafing. Mara's cool and all that, but had nothing at all to do with nothing. But you don't have to be. You become public information. What were you saying, bro?
Oh no, because I read a lot of books, so I do true crime.
I see a whole stack of them right there, including the BMF book that Mara Shalop wrote.
Being that I was recently went to the joint and checked out shit, and being that you just said that. The cover is what caught me. It's the gun and
SMM on top of it.
So I said, oh shit. I'm from up there and I'm in Atlanta, so let me see what the fuck. And I bought it, and it's like, right, it's not people who's from the area, it's a
British journalist
who's getting the money off of our lives.
Bro,
that's what they do.
Bro.
That's what they do, bro. That's what they do.
When I say I was so tired of seeing images of people getting thrown on police cars when I go to some of these events, right? And they talk about the war on drugs and all this other shit. And I'm like, that's all well and good, but I don't ever see y'all try to reach out to any of these people who are on these covers. You know what I'm saying? Like, these people aren't dead. They out here and about. Ask about their lives and you get blinks of eyes.
Oh, they scared to death.
You know what I'm saying? You get blinks of eyes.
They scared to death, man. They don't want to come nowhere near the real thing at all.
Yeah.
Because they are that far removed. Yeah. They figure that anybody who could have participated in some of the activities that go along with that lifestyle has to be some type of unstable, animalistic individual, and I don't want to be around that person. And that's understandable they would think that. But they don't mind exploiting or taking advantage of that person's trial and tribulation, though. Because that is what they do.
Facto.
They are parasites. That is what the fuck they do.
Facto, man.
Right? So, you know, in addition to Dope and Game and the American Dope series that I participate with Al Prophet, both on, American Dope is on YouTube. Dope and Game is going to be a podcast on one of the platforms. I don't want to speak on it yet because paperwork hasn't been signed. But I'm doing a prison reform program with my partner, Andre Norman. Andre Norman did 14 years. He's the reason that there exists a carjacking law. He made the carjacking law up for him. He's out of Boston. All right, he did 14 years on a 100-year bid. And before he decided to go into the law library and figure out, I could have left here 13 years ago if I'd went to the law library. I was too busy having fun in jail, though, running jail. Yeah. You know what I mean? And now he is one of the, he's like the premier, everything. You have to look up Andre Norman. The man does everything, but he does interventions, gang interventions. He does corporate interventions. Like he has the office at the Harvard Business School, Harvard Law School, London Business School, a couple of TED Talks. He's office manager for the Genius Network, and once you look up the Genius Network and you see what I'm talking about, you ain't gonna believe that. The YPO, Young Presidents Organization, was a collective of the of CEOs from around the world. Just a truly progressive individual, right? So we recently went to South Carolina in the latter part of August, and we went to do an assessment of the prison system there because they had an event in April of last year where 24 people were injured in a inner conflict, a gang conflict. And 24 were injured, 17 were stabbed, 17 died, or 7 died. 17 stabbed, 7 died. Now, people watch movies and they get the impression that this is everyday life in prison. That, just people always getting murdered in groups and all that. And that's not really how it is. Like, that's a pretty significant event to have happened, right? Yeah. And in response to that, the state of South Carolina locked down all 22 of its prisons and just had them on 24-hour lockdown inside these cells and were feeding them their food through slots in the door because they didn't know what to do, they didn't know where it came from. So enter Andre Norman, his older homie, my man Dominic Williams, who did 29 years on The Natural Life, right? And these two guys were the two most powerful inmates in the state of Massachusetts. Number 1 and number 2 in the state of Massachusetts, right? We were asked to come into the prison and see if we could figure out what was going on and basically, cease whatever was happening, which we did. And now I'll be going to the academy next 2 weeks.
Congratulations.
I'll be an official employee of the South Carolina Department of Corrections. And they know my past, they know my whole history, they know their history. And we're going to be operating our own dorm, 100 men, our own dorm. We're going to be bringing in our own educators, our own people to cook their food. We have a kitchen of our own. We're going to be determining what they eat, when they eat, what they learn. I'll be teaching them critical thinking. I'll be teaching them the processes that enabled me to not only survive the life that I lived, but to evolve from that life and adapt in the way that I have, because that's a skill set.
Yeah.
And it's not something that just happens. You don't just say, I want to do it, and then people return back to the streets. I've known a lot of people who tried to stop, and they just couldn't figure out how to assimilate with normal society or any of the aspects of normal society. They didn't know who they were not being in the game, And if the people who are sitting in the prison, regardless of the degree of punishment they may be enduring, if they haven't evolved their thinking, then at some point they're going to return to whatever those well-worn neural paths are inclined to, enforce in terms of their thoughts and processes, right? So these are some of the things that we'll be bringing to bear. We'll be bringing cats in to teach them real estate, to teach them culinary skills, to teach them welding, to teach them any type of entrepreneurial interest they may have, We're going to teach them. We're going to give them skills to, one, understand the value in their liberty, because a lot of them don't value their liberty. That's why they continually do the things they do and recidivate. They don't value their liberty, They don't understand how to acquire a quality of life in a free society. So to them, it's just, you know, going out is just a period between the, you know, the last time they were in and the next time they'll be in.
Crazy.
You know,
Crazy.
but we're going to give them the opportunity to develop the skill sets and the understandings that will enable them to make a conscious cognitive choice about how they want to live their life in the free world, if that's what they want to do. And if they're not, they got some place for your ass.
Bro, I applaud you and everything you're doing. I applaud you on the survival. I applaud you on being able to tell these stories and bring it into another generation, man. I really appreciate you taking your time today, man. And that's Cash Color Cannabis, a high level of conversation. We out.